Rome ruled continents, commanded the most powerful army on earth. Its roads, its laws, its culture spread across the known world. To many, it seemed unstoppable, eternal. But that was an illusion, because behind the marble and glory, Rome was already crumbling. From within, corruption, betrayal, and desperation would eat away at its core, while enemies circled the borders, and sometimes walked right through them. This isn't just the story of Rome's fall, it's the story of how an empire withered, fractured, and vanished. While the world watched and did nothing, you know the name, but not the whole story. Let's change that. The barbarian bargain gone wrong. In 376 AD, the Roman Empire faced a decision that would change everything. A massive horde of Gothic refugees, men, women, and children, arrived at the Danube River, fleeing the brutal advance of the Huns. They weren't there to conquer. They were desperate. They asked Rome for shelter. Rome agreed. But what followed was less mercy, more exploitation. The Goths were herded into camps, starved and stripped of dignity. When food ran out, many were forced to sell their children for scraps of meat, often dog meat. The Romans saw them as savages. What they didn't see was that they had just lit a fuse. That same year, the Goths snapped. They revolted. What followed was the Gothic War, and its climax, the Battle of Adrianople in 378, was a disaster Rome never recovered from. Emperor Valens led his forces into battle without waiting for reinforcements. It was a massacre. 2/3 of the Roman army were wiped out. Valens himself was killed and burned beyond recognition. This wasn't just a loss, it was a warning. Rome had let the enemy in, and the enemy had learned how to fight like them and win. Alaric and the sack of Rome. Alaric wasn't an outsider. He had fought for Rome. He rose through the ranks under Emperor Theodosius, commanding Gothic units within the Roman military. But loyalty only goes so far when respect runs dry. After Theodosius died, his sons inherited the empire and the arrogance. Alaric and his fellow Visigoths were treated like disposable muscle. Promises were broken, payments withheld. The empire didn't see them as allies, just tools. That was a mistake. In 410 AD, Alaric marched on Rome, not for glory, but for land, something the empire had long promised, but never delivered. After multiple failed negotiations, betrayals, and delays, he'd had enough. Rome, the eternal city, was left vulnerable. No army, no leadership, no defense. Alaric entered and sacked the city for 3 straight days, the first time in 800 years that Rome had fallen to a foreign army. The shock echoed across the world. But back in Ravenna, Emperor Honorius reportedly thought the messenger was talking about his pet chicken, also named Roma. Only when told it was the city, not the bird, did he show any concern. Briefly, the sack of Rome wasn't just symbolic. It was a psychological collapse. The empire still stood, but now everyone knew it could fall. But the real unraveling was just getting started. Successor kingdoms rise from Rome's ashes. Once Rome lost its grip, everyone grabbed a piece. In the chaos after Alaric's invasion, a Roman general named Constantine III declared himself emperor. He seized control of Britannia and Gaul, key Roman territories. The provinces, already strained and ignored, began to splinter. Britannia begged the official emperor, Honorius, for help. He refused. They kicked Constantine out on their own, but by then, Rome had already lost the island. For good. Meanwhile, Germanic tribes surged across the Rhine. The Vandals, Suebi, and Alans carved up Spain and North Africa like warlords dividing spoils. The Vandals, led by the ruthless Genseric, crossed into North Africa, seizing Carthage, a jewel of the empire. From there, they conquered Sicily and raided across the Mediterranean. Rome's naval dominance was gone. Even Rome's old allies turned. The Visigoths were gifted land in Gaul in exchange for help reclaiming Spain. But loyalty meant nothing now. Once the job was done, they betrayed the empire again, seizing more land for themselves. A temporary alliance, with permanent consequences. The Western Empire was no longer an empire. It was a crumbling corpse with scavengers tearing at the bones. And just when Rome thought it couldn't get worse, a new terror appeared on the horizon: Attila the Hun and the final blow. If Alaric cracked Rome's armor, Attila the Hun aimed for its heart. To the Romans, he was the embodiment of fear, a leader who didn't just raid cities, but erased them. His campaigns in Gaul and Italy were so devastating that even hardened generals fled rather than face him in battle. Entire towns vanished under his advance. Refugees poured into what remained of Roman territory. Panic spread faster than his armies. Rome, desperate and defenseless, made deals with devils. Former enemies like the Visigoths were suddenly allies again, bribed and begged to help push Attila back. It worked, for a moment. Attila was stopped in Gaul at the Battle of the Catalonian Plains, but not defeated. He returned with fury, tearing through Italy until famine and disease, not the Roman army, forced him to retreat. But his rampage left the Western Empire in ruins, its armies shattered, its cities burned, its people broken, and worse, its soldiers no longer believed in Rome. The legions were now mostly foreign mercenaries, men who'd never seen the city they were dying for, men who fought for coin, not country. Attila didn't destroy Rome, but he left it exposed, hollowed out, ready for the final blow. And when it came, it wasn't a dramatic battle. It was something far more pathetic. The Boy Emperor and the End of the West. In 475 AD, Rome crowned its final emperor, a teenager. Romulus Augustulus, just 16, was a figurehead installed by his father, the general Orestes. By then, the empire was a shell. Italy was all that remained. The army, mostly foreign mercenaries, demanded land as payment. Orestes refused, so they turned to Odoacer, a fellow officer of barbarian descent. He led a revolt, killed Orestes, and marched on Rome. Romulus was quietly deposed. No battle, no resistance. Odoacer spared him and sent the imperial insignia to the Eastern Emperor, declaring, "The West no longer needs an emperor." And just like that, after over 1,000 years, the Western Roman Empire was gone. Not with a war cry, but a whisper. The hidden triggers. Nobody talks about. Barbarian invasions ended Rome, but they didn't cause its collapse. The real damage came from within. Rome had grown too big, too fast. At its peak, it stretched from Britain to Syria. Managing such a vast empire was impossible. So in 285 AD, Emperor Diocletian split it into East and West. It helped at first, but over time, the wealthy East thrived, while the West was left poor and vulnerable. The economy was built on conquest and slavery. When expansion stopped, so did the slave supply. The system collapsed. Civil wars drained the treasury. The army shrank, and emperors hired foreign mercenaries with no loyalty to Rome, only to gold. Leadership was weak, Child emperors, corrupt officials, and a greedy aristocracy made things worse. The people stopped believing in the empire, and so did its soldiers. Then came Christianity. As it rose to dominance, emperors lost their divine status. Rome's old system of absorbing new cultures through religion fell apart. The glue that held it together vanished. Rome didn't just fall, it withered, until there was nothing left to save. Rome may have fallen in 476 AD, but its shadow never left. In the East, the Byzantine Empire kept the legacy alive for another 1,000 years. In the West, the dream of Rome rose again, when Charlemagne was crowned Holy Roman Emperor in 800 AD. Roman law, Roman language, Roman culture. They shaped the foundation of modern Europe. Latin didn't die. It became French, Spanish, Italian. Roman roads became the skeleton of European cities. Roman religion, Christianity, came to dominate the West, with its heart still beating from Rome itself. The empire crumbled. The emperors vanished. But the influence of Rome, it never stopped. It didn't just rule the world once. In many ways, it still does.